Good morning. Thank you for joining us. It's been a while since we've done one of these calls. This is one of my favorite that Dave does. It's the greatest income story never told. So again, as a reminder, click raise your hand. We can open up the line to have you ask questions or shoot over a chat, and we'll watch those as we go as well. And also, we're really excited because I think we're going to actually be able to do our tailgate this year. So look for the invitation. We'd love to see everyone. We're trying to find a really good game too, just so it's a little more entertaining, but it's all about seeing you anyways. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and just turn it over to Dave and again, ask questions as we go.
Great. Hey, welcome everybody. And thank you again for taking the time to join us. This is something that I have talked about for a long, long time. And you know, in different forums, I talk about this a lot. Whether it's us worrying about all the news of the day and getting sucked up into that, I thought that was a good place to start. And before I dive into the income story, because it's part of the income story, right? And again, like Jennifer said, it's the greatest story never told. People just don't talk about income when they talk about the market. And so with that, let's go ahead and just dive in and talk a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going on currently and our feelings now, as we take a look at, some of the past worries, if you will. So drum roll, please. Here we go. Okay, perfect. There it goes. Now, as you know, we have so many different issues to worry about, and there are many of them. It just goes on and on and on. And it always has. And we kind of went back and looked at this, if you will, since the 1970s, because we forget. In 1980, interest rates were at 21%. We forget that the 1970s was so divided as a nation. We get caught up in where we are today. We think about all the bad news of today. Afghanistan is a complete disaster. What that's going to lead to in the world, we obviously don't know. We can speculate. With 5,000 new terrorists released, there's more terror coming and all those things. You all know that. The market knows that. And the market's been going up. So even though it doesn't feel like, quotes, we're in charge the way we typically are as Americans, it still feels good out there because of profits, et cetera. But let's go back to 1970s, as I said. Let's pretend we have a one-time investment. We have $100,000 in our retirement fund, and we're hanging around our little breakfast club, and everybody's talking about what you ought to do and do this and do that. You ought to invest your money. And instead, you just put it in and you just take the income, which is the middle column, your dividend income. Now, we're not reinvesting this. We're just taking it and we're spending it, okay? And then we start into the decade and we get, we talk about politics today being bad. This is Nixon followed by Carter. This was not a good 1-2 punch. We saw a 50% market decline in 1973 and 4. And for those of you who are a little more seasoned, you remember well that, in fact, we had an oil embargo. Literally, people were lined up for gasoline. It's horrible, absolutely horrible time. And so, again, as we go through this decade, by the end of the decade, though, we see that our income has basically doubled. Our income has doubled through one of the worst decades ever. And by the end of that decade, we now have 21.5% interest rates. I mean, now we're talking today about, oh my gosh, what if the Fed doesn't taper, does this, does that? They raise rates from 0 to 0.5%. Oh, that's so frightening for the world. It's not frightening. It's not frightening at all, but every single day they have to sit down and tell you why the world is going to end, because otherwise you won't watch the news. You won't. What's the point, right? We had our worst recession finally ended in 1982. And of course, the guy that really changed so many things was shot within an inch of his life, less than an inch of his life. And he did survive, of course. But we forget the Soviet Union during that time. They shot down a jetliner full of passengers. I mean, that's the world we were in. We were in a world that, kind of had some really serious bad guys in it, too. The market crashed in 1987. We forget about that. Over 20% in a day it went down. Over 20%. And we certainly had credit crises then. We had a junk bond collapse in the late 80s. And then we started the Gulf War. Once again, income all being taken out, we are now drawing nearly 10,000 more per year, and we have total income of 156,000 next column over. Again, no reinvestment. This is just total income out. So way more than we've put in now at this point, and you can see how fast the growth is of this story. Okay? Let's open up the 1990s because, oh, that was such a great time. We had 6 rate increases in 93, right? Talk about the market worrying about the bond market. It was crazy. And we had, of course, the Fed chair during a time talking about irrational exuberance, okay? Which did, in fact, finally happen many, 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 many years after the irrational exuberance, when we had a 50% drop in 2001. Now, for those of you who are not worried about Y2K, you were, or the world was, and nothing happened. Tech stocks blew up in 2000. They were too high, no doubt about it. But again, the market falls 50%. How's our income doing? It continues to rise. You know, corporations are never all good actors, and we had WorldCom and Enron and all the bankruptcies of 2002. All of that in there. We continued and went to an Iraq war. Oil spiked crazily during that period of time, and it led to 2008, another financial crisis, 50% drop. You get the point. We're trying to pick a period from 1970 to now that is full of more big market drops than any other period. But what happens during those periods to your income? They typically stay the same. Some rise and some go down very slightly. Remember, in 2008, you can see with the bank crisis, banks had to stop paying. All financial companies had to stop paying their dividend. Not the end of the world. We're still drawing 8 times the amount as we started. Unbelievable. Unemployment spikes. The fiscal cliff. How many times were we told about the European pigs nations, right? Portugal, Italy, and Greece. They were going to end the world. And Greece, of course, has the GDP of Vermont. And it was going to take down the world. And remember, they even got to the point where people were so certain of the nonsense they were babbling that a little island of Crete, it's like a rock off of Greece. I mean, it's just this nothing island where they have, you know, lots of illegal banking activities there. That was going to take the world down. People just believe this nonsense constantly. It's like you go into this dark web page, but it's always happened. It's always happened. It's just worse now. We amp it up. Did you hear that they're going to take our money out of the banks? Who? Well, the government is. Who said that? Oh, I heard it on the dark web somewhere. This goes on and on and on all the time. We get to this terrible, terrible election, right? Clinton and Trump, whoever you voted for, whoever you like, you know, and then we have all these political divides, as we did, if you will, Back to the Future in 1970. And what do we see of our income? We're up to $55,000. We never reinvested a dime. Started at $3,863,000 worth of total income. Unbelievable. All right, turn the page. We're almost there. In 2019, we're up to 64,000. 64,000. Now, nobody gets to live forever. They just don't. Sorry. So let's see how much, because now it does actually matter because our heirs are going to receive our pile. We've drawn out about $1 million now. Obviously, to date, we have over $1 million, right? $1 million of income on $100,000. The only thing that matters, but your heirs are going to receive $4 million. $4 million. If you would have reinvested all the money, that's just the fun thing to look at because that's what everybody always talks about. During this period of time, you would have wound up with $18 million. Folks, that's just the S&P 500. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Now, what do I mean by good and bad and ugly? Well, to borrow a awesome movies phrase, the good are the dividend payers, right? They're the companies that keep raising their dividends year after year after year after year. Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson, 3M, companies like that. Because why? Because our target is income. It's not growth. It's income. It's the only thing that matters, really, right? Is it producing a growing stream of income faster than the rate of inflation all the days of your life? The bad isn't really bad. Google, Amazon, Netflix, they're great companies. Microsoft, until they finally started paying a dividend. All those companies were a big driver into why your kids get $4 million, but they didn't help the income picture at all. Isn't that amazing to think about? They didn't even help. There's a lot of companies out there, great companies, that added no income, and yet that's still, you're drawing $1 million worth of income over this period. The ugly are the WorldComs, Enrons, and companies that just went poof and disappeared. Gone. All your capital, no dividends, wiped out. That's creative destruction. It's the part of the story. We get focused on what's not working and never see what is. In a moment, I'm going to talk about some of the things coming forward and that are just obvious and hit you in the face, but everybody's talking about whether the market's overpriced, underpriced, grinding it out every single day. All the bears are pulled out every time there's a tiny correction. Yeah, we expect a correction, blah, blah, blah. Why don't you just play it safe your whole life and say you expect a correction? Nobody ever doesn't expect a correction. It'd be foolish not to. We have to expect corrections. They happen all the time. All the time. 5% corrections or multiple times a year on average, about once a year for a 10% correction. 20% is about every 3 to 5 years. It's called a bear market. It's all bad. They happen all the time on their way to new all-time highs. You don't get this kind of income growth in anything else on the planet. And your requirement is to do nothing at all. If you were wanting to help Procter & Gamble, out, they don't want your help. They're not going to want your help at all. You're not allowed to show up on their property. Just own their stock. And for a gazillion years, 75 years or so, their income has gone up every single year. I heard this the other day. 3M, the maker of tape, right? Post-it notes. I mean, high-tech stuff like that. Raise their dividend every year for 100 years. 100 years. This is an amazing story. And all we ever talk about is what's wrong in the world. We all talk about the fact that it just can't continue. Isn't the market too high? I don't know if the market is waiting for its next 5 or 10% correction on its way to its next batch of all-time highs. I'm fully aware that Afghanistan is a complete unnecessary train wreck. I'm fully aware that this is going to be a whole long time, maybe decades, of extra terrorist attacks in the world because of this. I'm angry too. It doesn't change the fact that this will be okay. Corporations will figure it out. They always have. And when we take a look at a little bit of history, we can see, I think, with a little more clarity, a little bit of what's going on in the world. And if we can clear the glasses a little bit, and it's hard to do because every single day, every day, beating into us what's wrong, why this won't work, leadership's bad, where the Fed is just printing money. We can't do all this. It's all terrible. We're going to have inflation. Whatever it is, the argument is. It's always there. And I get COVID just won't go away. But you know what? You and I are spending money. We're not acting like it's here. We're not in our basement. Sure, some are. I get it. But most people are out spending money and getting on with their lives. And the reality is underneath it all. You can just look at the market and know that this is happening. You don't have to pretend to be have science or a certain belief. We ought to wear a mask. We shouldn't. Whatever. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I don't really care what your belief is. Here's the fact: people are moving out and spending money with or without a mask. They're going out and doing stuff. And this is really continuing to drive forward. And here's the other reality too. It's a global pandemic. You don't hear anything about India anymore, do you? Remember how horrible it was a few months ago? You know why you don't hear much about it anymore? It's not horrible anymore. I mean, it's not good that anybody's dying, but when you look at a ski slope, that's what their death and their count numbers are doing. They're straight down. What about Brazil? I thought Brazil was on fire. It was never coming back. You don't hear anything about Brazil. Now, when we think about that, it's an important point. It's not an opinion about COVID. It's an important point to understand that you're driven on this all the time by what's wrong, not what's right. So let's talk about a couple of things that are really going right in the world. Okay. These are not really predictions. These are things that are happening. Okay. This is happening. Okay. You don't have to think about all the advances in the world all the time like I do, but we have to think about it from time to time, because otherwise we do get caught up in all that's wrong in the world right now. But the healthcare innovation, not just the vaccine, but the vaccine opened up a lot of people's eyes to how quickly things are changing in healthcare. Whether it's 3D printed organs, not an organ, your organ from your cells, meaning your body will accept it. These things are so yesterday and happening at such speed. Like you have a watch, so if you fall down, it dials 911. You don't have to find a phone. You might have been knocked unconscious. You might have passed out. You wake up in the hospital to care. That's so yesterday. It happens with people all the time. We may be curing cancer. We certainly are learning how to treat it. We may be on the verge of curing many, many cancers. We really are. Cash may be a distant memory. Now, I know people see this as a bad thing, and maybe it is, to the point that you can't really pay, your painter with cash, and they will be able to track taxes and things like that better. I totally get that. But it's not the end of the world, and it makes us all, if you will, there's less cost to all the transactions that occur. And of course, there are trillions of dollars of that, minus a little less cost is a lot of money. It's a big deal. So fintech is what we're talking about here, financial technology companies. And semiconductors are in everything, everywhere. It's the Internet of Things. It's all connected. Now, I don't understand all of this by any remote stretch. But the idea that my clothes will be monitoring my blood pressure, let's say I had a heart condition, I hope I don't, but I don't think I do, but it'll monitor that on an ongoing basis, insulin for diabetics, all of those things. And it'll be able to, for example, I can order a shirt and have it delivered X amount of time. That's my shirt. It's not a large, it's a shirt that is exactly my size. These are things that are happening. Instead of going to a tailor and all those other things you have to do, if that's what you choose to do, all of those things, that sounds like not that important, but I think the medical part certainly is. Digital entertainment. So we have to be thinking about what's going on in there with the streaming space. Is that really all just COVID and it's all going to change? No, it's here to stay, right? It's here to stay. Whether it's gaming or anything else, it's another area that things are really, really going fast in. Autonomous vehicles, hey, whether you want to drive a car or don't want to drive a car, the nice thing is too that they really, for people that are not as capable, honestly, they keep people in the lanes now, don't they? Right? Instead of drifting off. It's nice. Well, in the long run, it's going to be such a big deal that we want to be invested in this space. There's no question that autonomous vehicles are here and they're coming fast, and they, as this says, they're going to hit the fast lane. Now, green machines the same way. Are they going to rule the road? I don't care if you're a greenie or you're not. I mean, we all want clean air and all that stuff. So I guess we all are to some degree. But at the same time, my car uses gas, and then down the road, it probably won't. But we are. This is coming, and that's why some of you are seeing different products in your. And I'll touch on that before we're done today too. Renewable energy, innovative companies will make the world better. All of these things are true. They have always been true, but it's coming at light speed, much more quickly than people even can think about it. I think about this all the time, how I can try to train my brain to think better by not thinking linear. It's really hard. Our minds are built linear. And you can think about it in a financial sense of like compound interest, right? That's exponential, right? It's not just Like I put $100 in, then I put 100 in, I put 100 in, so I now have 300. No, it's 100 plus the interest and so on. But exponential really is doubling of computer speed, doubling of the speed of innovation. And so when we think of 30 steps, 30 yards, right? You think of 30 steps exponentially, and you're walking to the sun. That's crazy. That's crazy. But that's what happens with technology. Our mind can't wrap itself around that. I understand, it just can't. But these things are happening, and you want to have some money in front of them. So even though we're talking about income, I think it's important to find income in healthcare where we can. It's important to find it in innovative companies like Apple. They pay a tiny dividend, very tiny, but they raise it a lot every year. So I wanted to share the income story and that there is great hope, but I also want to say that there is great hope going forward. This works. Now, I know we're going to do another meeting, and I don't want to make this too long or redundant. We're going to do another meeting talking about how difficult it is in a zero interest world to draw income today. This is the income story of around 3%. Today, the S&P pays 2%. That's tough place to start when, in fact, what you want to do is say take out 4 or 5%, which I think is doable. So we'll have another meeting to talk about that. I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but I do want you to understand that's why you don't own just the S&P 500. It's a great story, but we need to produce income, and we're struggling to do it in many different ways for our income clients. It's very, very hard in a zero interest world. But the whole idea, and we hear this a lot, well, you don't own any bonds. It's like, no, we can't own any bonds. We can't own much cash. A bond today, a 10-year treasury is 1.25%. That won't work. I mean, that's just saying, I want to own this because this is what I learned in finance school, is you have to have a 60% stock, 40% bond portfolio that guarantees it won't work, because that's what I've been taught. And there's still people that are stubbornly sticking to that. I mean, people that manage trillions of dollars as a company, trillions, still are stuck on why we have to own bonds. So it is a struggle out there. I completely get it. And I wish we had an 8% government bond to be fine, right? I mean, I remember 25 years ago, how many people were so happy to have an 8% fixed annuity. They really were paying that much. It's like, this is crazy easy. 8% income, great. Really, I think you probably know they're not available anymore. So we have to change as times change. It doesn't mean we're predicting the future. One of the things I do know is we have to be continuing to position as if the world is continuing to grow, because it is. Innovation isn't stopping. You can have stupid decisions made in Washington, D.C. every single day, and the world will continue. It will continue. That's why we have elections periodically, to change things, to get people that aren't doing a good job out. We'll see what happens. This is a very strange world politically, but everything is politics. Try to filter it out. Try to dial it down. There's always noise out there. And you know what it is? It's always negative all the time. All the time. And that's a tough one to remember, but it's so totally true. So if you have some questions, Jen, is there anything else we should be covering today?
Not that I have, but we would love some questions. So chat away on the little chat feature, raise your hand, whatever works best for you. And we'd love to answer some questions.
We'll give it a second here. And okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, usually they roll in here shortly, so we'll give them some time.
Okay, let's queue them up then if we have some, okay? Yeah. But I also wanted to comment on this because it's a very timely thing. We had the governor come out yesterday and talk about, the use in the hospitals is way overdone. And obviously, let's hope that doesn't get worse. But because people actually need treatments out there too on an ongoing basis. We don't want to shut that down. But here's the thing I want to also say. It's not just India. It's not just Brazil. It's even individual states that we're really seeing death rates decline, like Florida. You don't hear that in the news because Florida is just too easy for the major media to bash. But the reality is the death rate looks like a ski slope in Florida. So I think we're turning the corner on some of these. There's many doctors out that are talking about that. So let's hope that's not the case, or that it is the case in Idaho, that we're peaking and we'll start back down. But I also do disagree with the governor on this. I wanted you to know I went on earlier. I'm not disagreeing with him generally. I'm just saying there are not 4 ICU beds, not according to the very numbers that his administration released yesterday. They're released every single day. You can see what they are. I think we have 30 or 40 ICU beds. That's not enough. That's not what it should be. And it's much more of a crisis, but it's not 4. So again, I just want to, again, not say it's different, but I think that there's a little better news in COVID land than is going to be talked about every single day. Okay.
All right, you do have a question. Companies are having a difficult time hiring people. Will this affect the company's profits in the future?
Without a doubt. Great point. Here's what's happening across the United States, okay? And this is not a political discussion. It's a political reality that the blue states have all of the highest unemployment rates because they continue to accept the federal money. The red states, there were 26 of them, I believe, initially. More came on board when they started to see the numbers roll in. I don't know the exact amount, but it was of the red states came out. Idaho's what, 3% unemployment, so on. So it's better here. I know everybody here needs people, but it is a lot better here in Idaho than it is in California as far as finding employees. And California is not the only one. What I'm saying is those states are coming to the end, September's it, right? When they are not going to get the federal money. So the better, if you will, I can't sit on my couch and make more money that way is ending. And so I think more and more people will be coming into the workforce to fill those positions. Let's hope so. I think the bigger problem is the lack of training coming out of college. That's been a problem for 20 years. It still is a problem. And because kids are not coming out with any ability to think. No critical thinking skills are taught anymore. And I guess you should never say none, but very little critical thinking is done. And so this has been a problem for employers, retraining people and also training to specificity within that field is something that's been an ongoing problem. Even though people may come out with a business major, they don't have any idea what capital markets do. I'm not sure the professors that teach it do. So it is a really serious problem. Hopefully I think the pandemic has really shown that and given people the ability to Zoom. Costs of education are coming down. There's no doubt about that. And community colleges, which train people specifically for work, are really popular, very cheap, and I think is going to help drive that education cost down. Okay?
Okay. When the market makes a significant negative change just prior to target retirement date, there may not be enough time to recover prior to when funds are needed. How do you protect from this situation?
Excellent point. Okay, this is getting into the income planning positioning. So as you're moving your way right to that retirement date, right? As you're moving a year out to 6 months out and so on, you are beginning to position a portfolio. There's different ways of doing it. Okay, let's say much of your money is in a 401k with limited options. Okay, well, we're going to use the good options there. But what we need to do then on other accounts is begin to position them more for income. And because you can't necessarily do that within your 401k. So everybody's going to be different on this, so I don't want to be exact. But we're trying now to hit a position on the day of retirement where our assumption is right before or right after your retirement, you are going to go through the next bear market. And it's going to be severe and it's going to be multi-year, not 2 months like the last one. So it's going to take a while to work your way through, and you're going to want income. That needs to be positioned as you move in. So let me give another example that how important it is. We think of your account always with the next correction in mind. Meaning, let's say you have $1 million, that's enough, you think. We're going to say, okay, your income is based on 900,000. The next 10% correction is already mentally taken, so we guard against that, especially when we're like we are now at all-time highs. That's not a bearish statement that we're all-time highs. We are. It doesn't mean what it does mean, let me rephrase. What it does mean is that we want to have 3 to 5 years worth of income in our mind set aside. Now, in your accounts, what you have there, it doesn't look like cash. And that's where we wanted to kind of talk again. We're going to do another income story type of thing, where you can't just have 2% S&P yields. You also need to have other things in there, and many of those need to not move with the market, so we can liquidate them during a downtime to provide income, because you can't sell down. You can't sell your dividend paying stocks to produce income, because now they won't produce to give you income today, because they won't produce income in the future. So we're thinking 3 to 5 years out, depending on the market condition, not a prediction. Where is the market? Are we in the midst of a correction? Good, then that's a great time to enter. One other thing, a lot of people retired in 1999, took out 7 or 10% income, way too high, because they all knew that it was totally safe to do, because the market could only go up. It was all good. Bad idea, horrible idea. And that is a contrast to where, what people are saying today. You need to take out less than 3%. Just want you to understand, it is something better to enter into or have a correction before retirement than right after retirement, because that artificially high number we had in 99 when you had all those tech stocks and you ran your money up to $1 million, and now wow, I can retire. And then it went. That's the frightening part, because now 2 years later, you're going back to find work. That's not what you want. You want the correction before, then you have the real number. You know what you're going in with. That's a lot better. So again, we're thinking about it as you approach, but more importantly, after that point going forward. Good question.
All right. I think that's it, Dave.
Okay. All right. Terrific. Well, thank you all. Quickly raise your hand or whatever if you have anything else. That's about it. Jen, do we have anything else here? I think you covered it for watch for our tailgate party, and we're hoping we're going to do it. If you have any more questions regarding what we're doing specifically, that is what we're here for. We think about this all the time. It doesn't mean we're trying to predict the future. We're just trying to think. And I think it's important to understand that's what we do, is spend our time thinking, not predicting the market's going to go back and forth, trying to find good thinkers in the world to help us think through maybe something that we're not using as a product, and would it fit? And so that's nice about technology too, because they can run these models and help us, gear a little bit better. Models are fine. They don't tell you what the future is, but they help you make sure you're not making stupid mistakes. Call us if you have any questions. Appreciate you all. And here's one. Who are the thinkers you listen to? Okay, I'll quickly answer that, because that's a good question. All right, Wall Street Journal, very best one. There's no question. And I know they typically talk about the Wall Street Journal being more on the right. No, just because the New York Times is so far left doesn't make the Wall Street Journal on the right. It's right of all of the newspapers. Here's the beauty of it. They get the best thinkers on the left and on the right in their editorial pages. They print news. They talk about it. And those help me a lot in my thinking. Now, from there, the people at First Trust are, I just can't even say how number one they are in their whole thought process. And believe it or not, they've been bullish for 12 years. I mean, strongly bullish for 12 years. Dead right. Lots of reasons to leave. We just talked about them, right? Got to get out because of this, that, and other things. It doesn't mean we haven't had corrections. That's part of it. But when you get those kind of people that tell you what's going on, get COVID data in, you get all of those things to why the market is functioning and working as well as it is in spite of all the bad news. Now, the other thing, what kind of thinkers? That also includes books and all those other things, of course, because they dive in and make you think about things differently. And finally, we gather as a group and we talk and share ideas. And I think that's incredibly important. I don't know how people could operate as a satellite out there. We have so many different partners from JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and so many, as you know, them all in your portfolios, American funds. They bring their managers through. These are all, and some of them are just dumb as a rock. I know, they just regurgitate their garbage, but I guess that's part of what 40 years experience says. It's like, okay, check it off. Thanks for coming. But the people will come in, or you can set it aside and you can say, let's not talk about bonds right now. How about we talk about something over here? And you get great ideas from different people. So thank you for the question. That's really what it is. And also, I personally don't watch a lot of the daily news. I can't do it. I know I'm on talk radio all the time. I know I'm on the news. I get it. I can't be there. It doesn't help me think. It really doesn't. It makes us all angry, right? Okay. Thank you, Maria, for that. And Jennifer, I think that is it, right?
Yep. I think that's all we got.
Good deal. All right. Everybody have a great, super great first day of September. It's my favorite time of year, but I know it's kind of depressing. Summer's gone away. Have a great rest of the day.